Hi, welcome back to my latest exercise to help you hone your skills in painting. Hopefully you'll get some value out of this. Today I'm going to be just doing a little field of poppies. So the first thing we want to do, I'm just doing this on with acrylic paints, and I'm just doing it on paper instead of a canvas this time. So I've marked the picture that I have here just into halves so that I can get a bit of a handle on how this is going to go. So we'll just lightly sketch in. A few hills in the background. Down through here. I'm just looking at all of the shadows and the variations. We don't need a lot. So the paint colours that we're using today will be some cerulean blue and white for the sky. We'll be using dark green, and we'll change the tones of that with white to sort of tone it down. A lemon green, a lemon yellow, sorry. We'll only use a small amount of that, and of course scarlet red, so a nice poppy colour. So what we're going to do first, I'll just put my little drawing down there, is we'll take cerulean blue and white on our palette. We're going to put some sky in, and the sky is going to have some clouds in it. So what we want to do is start to get ready, just so that I can blend a bit better. What I will do is just lightly spray my canvas, or spray the sheet, just to add a bit more water to it. White, a little bit of blue, and we'll start over here and just working fast. I'll just add more and more white as I go, because I want it darker over here than I do on this end here. This is where the light's coming from, so the sky will be a lot paler over here. So there's still a hint of blue down this end. You don't want it pure white. Make that a little bit darker in this corner. While the paint is still wet, just keep working this in. So it's just wet on wet. If you left that until it dried, you wouldn't be able to blend it all. Keep in mind too, with acrylic paints, they'll always dry darker. So it's best to err on the side of less, because you can always add more to it and build it up. Yeah? Okay, so what we're going to look at now is we've roughly put in the sky. We're going to put in the clouds now. So to make like a shadow colour, if you have a look outside at clouds, they usually have dark areas or shadow areas, and to make a grey we're going to add a tiny bit of red to this blue to make it purple. Add more white, add more blue, and just keep adding little bits until I don't want it too intense. Having a look at my photo, dark, and we'll smudge this in. Just okay. So what I want to do now, I'll wipe some of that paint off. Clean off my brush. Pick up some more white before these all dry, and just blotch a bit of white around. Not a terrible lot, because we need to feather some of this out. So keep working with it while it's wet, so you can actually move the paint around. So I'm drying off my brush. And we'll just work on this. Work it in, move it around. And I'm concentrating on the edges. You don't want it all to be all whisked away. You need some heavier areas and some thinner areas, thicker areas. I don't want any straight lines anywhere, so I'm just smushing it. And we can come back later, when it dries, we can come back and add a bit more definition to it if it needs it. So just keep working on it. Keep my brush fairly dry. You don't want this really dark and intense, otherwise it looks like you've just dumped a whole heap of stuff in your sky. Clouds, even though they can be heavy, they've moved there, like they're quite wispy. Tone that down a little bit. We'll come back later and put some bit more white in. I didn't want these white, I wanted them with a hint of blue, so we're still picking up a little bit of the blue from the sky. You don't want to come straight in with pure white, because then when you put the highlights in later, there's nowhere to go. You can't get brighter than white. soften some of these edges, not all of them. Sit and watch the clouds for a while so you can see what they're all about. Smush that down a bit. It's not too shabby. Alright, I'll have a look at my photo here. So I'm checking out my photo. So we're moving forward, so we're moving from the back forward. The next thing I'm going to put in are the mountains. Soften some of those. Okay. So with the mountains, if you have a look at mountains in the distance, the further back you go, the lighter and bluer they are, and this is all to do with light. Light in the air has a lot of moisture. There's a lot of blue. So the further back you go, they get bluer, but they get lighter. As you come forward, they get less blue and they get darker. So these are all in the distance, and we haven't got layers and layers and layers of mountains. So we're going to mix up like a really light, use a flat brush. No, I'll stay with my filbert. I'll get a smaller one. I've been using filbert brushes, so they're like a square or a flat-ended, but they're not. They've got a little bit of a curve there, and they come in this way as well. So they're sort of rounded this way, and this way. This brush is getting older now, so it's losing its shape. This one, I'll show you a bit better. So that's a filbert. Okay, so this colour here that we've used in the bottom of the clouds, that's going to be quite okay for our mountains. So I think it's still a bit dark, so I'll add a bit of white and tone it down. It's looking pretty good. I'll just leave a little bit of variation in the colour. I don't want it to be like a solid colour. So that's it. That's the mountains. So the next thing we're going to do is lay in some of these trees. And if you look on the edges, they're not sharp lines, so they get a bit smushed. So what we also need to do, if you have a look at trees outside, there's a bit of reflection around the edges of them, which is a reflection coming from the sky. So a little bit of the bluish colour will kind of wrap around, but it's not obvious that it's going to do it. So we need to just sort of break it up a bit and sort of blend a little bit of what's happening here with what's happening here. We've got darker shadow areas. We've got middle areas that are like a middle tone of the green, and we also have lighter areas, which in effect is highlights. So with that, what we'll do is mix. On our palette, you want to make sure you've got 3 different kinds of greens. Okay, so I'll clean my brush off again, dry that on a rag. So I'm going to go in just lay in the general shape that we want. A bit more water, so that you don't drown your painting and have lots of paint dribbling down. When you load more water onto your brush, just tap it onto your cloth and that'll take some of the excess water off it. So that's a bit of okay, so now I'm going to come in and just start poking in. That's all it is. We're not being overly precise here. So I need a slightly lighter shade of that. So we'll tone it down with a little bit of white. And start splotching some of these edges so that I haven't got any hard lines. We don't want any hard lines because that's not what we're after. So don't cover up your dark totally. We're just going here and there. We need to be able to see some of that that's the wrong colour I've just picked up. like to make this a bit grayer. Bit of blue, a bit of red. Paint off my brush, so I'm bringing it back to a fairly dry brush. And before this all dries, you want to just sort of soften the edges and move it around. Just added a tiny bit of the blue from the sky to what's on my brush. Let me put that down. And it's just making a version of a dirty, like a grey green. So I'm just working backwards and forwards with my different tones, just softening here, adding a bit more there. Just go by instinct. When we finish, we'll be adding some branches and some trunks and things, so this is not the finished product. Soften it a bit there. And add a bit more shadow in some of these places where I've lost it. So you're adding and subtracting, as you can see. You sort of look and go, yeah, I could probably put a bit of shadow in there. So just break it all up. Nearly run out of that colour. Add some more darker bits. Let's add a bit of a darker blue, like a bit of ultramarine perhaps, to our blend. So just around the bottoms, make it a bit darker. Just here and there. It can be a bit darker this end because the light's over here. It's actually darker this end. Soften it down. Okie doke. So looking at my drawing again, I am now going to lay in, I'm moving more forward, so I'm going to lay in some of this background stuff. So we've got a bit of a pink happening here, we've got a lighter area through here, so we'll just mix up a few paints in the colours that we've used. So the red in this one to make the pink, red and white make pink, the red in that will be from the poppy colour that we chose earlier, which is like a scarlet. So we'll mix up a bit of a pink. So we'll take a bigger glop of white, a bit more water, and tiny bits of the red. You don't want a lot. See, I've taken too much there, so I've got to add more white. Probably a hint of like a yellow green. So if you mix a little bit of the yellow in your green, you want to get this sort of yellow green. It's like a yellow green actually. So pink with just a hint. We'll see what this one's like. Bit more red. Too much. Bit more white. Just keep playing with it until you get the colour that you want. It's good to have a piece of paper or a piece of canvas next to you and trial some of these things on them. So the secret here is to keep working while the paint's wet. Then you can blend it and move it around. White. bit of the greeny. So we're just laying in some colours in the back here, and we'll get darker as we come forward. A relatively sharp edge along the back here, which indicates that the hill goes over the back like this. Now I'm going to pick a bit of a darker green, mix it in, so we've got a bit more variation in our field. So this is like a viridian, this one, so we'll tone it down a bit with a bit of blue, a bit of a dark blue. Water, add a bit of water so I can just sort of blend these together a bit. Have it on my rag. Don't want any sharp lines. Okay, through the middle here, you can see sort of a lighter patch through here. We've got some reds starting to come into the pinks here as it starts to give an indication of lots of poppies getting down to singular poppies in the front. So at the back it's just like a blur. Get my water. I'll add just a little bit more red into my mix. I'm just toning that green down. It seems to be a bit too much, so like I said before, a bit of adding and subtraction. You do something and think, no, it's not actually working. So just keep playing with it. Let's get rid of those hard lines before this dries totally, so I can put some other paint over it. Now those light areas, down like that. A bit of white, stick a bit of variation in. Now we're not painting all of this fore area because a lot of that's going to be poppies. There'll be some green amongst it all, but I don't want to have to put the poppies over a really dark paint like that. I want the ones, particularly at the front, to be quite vibrant. Vivid? Vibrant? Vibrant. Okay. As you can see, my brush strokes are not all going the same way. I don't want it to be that uniform. I want to indicate lots of flowers, lots of things happening back here, and I'll just get brighter as I come forward. Might clean that brush off it, reload it. Tap, tap, tap on my cloth. So it's important, see how I've got a straight line here? That's going to dry like that. So I really need to blend some other paint into that to try and get rid of it. I don't want any straight lines. We'll add some more of the green back in it. So I'm just thinning away any edges before I move on. Not that this will stay like this, but it's just so that I don't have any hard, sharp edges. I'm just fading away or feathering the paint. I'm just going back with some water and moving some of this around a little bit. Now I'm coming in with with a brighter version of our red, which is the solid colour, and just doing some dots. And as the brush becomes drier and has less and less paint on it, I'll move some of those back so that it's just going to give a hint of separate little poppies. There's no pattern, just here and there. You don't want it to be regular. That's not what we're doing. No. No, I'll stay with the filbert. See how these are getting lighter and softer as we go back. These got lines in. They'll get bigger as you come forward. I really need to fill in before I get too excited. What water am I drawing? Okay, let's show you this. So I really need to underlay some greens through here in the forefront, so that I can lay some of the red poppies. So it'll be green with a bit of red, like what we've done here, and then we'll come back over that and have some more definition in the poppies. So what we're going to do, I'll put that brush down. That's the one I've been using with the red, so I won't use that. Now I'll grab a different one, probably a bigger filbert. So I need some lighter colour. Might go the other way. That's better. That's just water. It's a bit hot here today, so the paints are starting to dry quite fast. I'll just add more water to my mix. I've added a little tiny bit of brown to this so that I can work with it better. So I'm doing this in the direction of grasses, even though I'm not defining them, but the paint will loosely be in that direction. Just a dark green in the corners. Along the bottom edge. I'm not going to cover this totally, as I said before. I'm just going to poke bits of green here and there. I'm going to put the poppies in very shortly, so you want them to be a bit more pronounced. So I'll just go in here and come back over some of the white areas that we've left. Just here and there. I'll just get myself a bit more red before we go any further. Put it on this palette. Nice bright scarlet red. These will be less obvious, some less obvious. I'm still sort of blending. We're not defining exact poppies. We're not going for that look, but we'll come back over the top of some of these to make them a little bit more defined. They're still sort of splotches here and there at this stage. Let me clean that brush off. Dry it off on my cloth. Load it again, and I'm just going to tap some of the excess water away. I don't want that much water on it. So I can still move some of this. Just to fill in some of these white spaces, but not with a solid paint, if that makes sense. I'm just sort of spreading a little bit of the colour, like a hint of the colour. Well, I've got the tiniest bit of this shade on here. I'll just go over some of this in the background to define more poppies going back there without actually seeing each individual poppy. So it's really the colour that you want. Tone this bit down a little bit. Get some of that paint off. So just getting rid of some of those hard edges before the paint dries. That's a bit better. A little bit more water, tap it off. Okay, this is coming along. So now I've got to add some more, work on the grass more, work on the poppies more. You just keep building it up as you go along. Might change to a smaller filbert, the one that I was using earlier. So poppies are a little bit, their petals are a little bit concave, so I'm just sort of making a hint. I don't want it to be too obvious, just sort of here and there. They're kind of, the overall look is a little bit circular, but they're not exactly circular, so keep them a bit rough, a bit loose. Loose is really good. I'm picking up a round pointed brush. This one's a number 6. So I'm just going over, laying some paint over the top of some of these just to make the area a bit brighter. So we want more down here. There's some lighter ones in amongst here, so they're in amongst the grasses, they're behind the grasses. We'll bring some of the grasses back over the top of them. Where the grass is darker, don't make the red quite so obvious. going to come back. I'm going to come back and work more on the grasses. Actually, no, I won't. While these all dry, we'll come back here and work on this line back here and sort of tidy all this up a bit. So I'm mixing some sort of my green with a bit of blue, a bit of brown, so it's a sort of a really dark khaki muddy kind of colour. I'll blend the top in because it's a more of a shadow colour for the trees. A bit dry. Just be careful not to let the paint dry in your brushes. It's a bit hard to get off. What's that other little filbert? Oh, there. No, that's fine. Just do little bits and pull some of this paint up on the top edge so that we don't end up with any hard edges the whole way along. You can have, see over here, that looks like 2 rows of trees. This I've sort of feathered away. So it's not looking too shabby. Come back with a little bit of water. This may or may not work. I'm looking at it, and maybe I'm overthinking it. I just want to neaten up the lighter part here. So I've just got water on my brush. Well, I've damped my brush. So I'm just coming back I'm just coming in against that line just to blend it a little bit so it's not quite so rough. A little bit more water. I'm just blending the dark to the light, just smoothing that line a tiny bit. A bit more of that colour. That is better. Right, we'll pick up my pointed brush. I've only got water on it. Good. Okay, so we'll go into the lighter green. And don't have a terrible lot of paint on this when you're doing this sort of flicking for the grasses, otherwise you'll end up with big blobs of paint everywhere. So you just want a little bit of paint on the brush. Don't have it overly wet, and I'm just sort of flicking here and there. It's only going to make a tiny bit of difference. Some of them are going to go across the fronts of some of these flowers. I'm going to pick up slightly darker. So all we're aiming for is a bit of variation. So it's not, there's not so much of the one colour. So it's just little bits. I'm barely touching the paper. I might grab some of the dark that we used up here. That was actually a good colour. Ah, this is nice. Just smush it around. I won't play too much with that. Okay, poppies have a dark centre, so we're not going to use black. Black is really strong, but we're going to make a really dark colour, which will be like a brown colour for the central stamen area. So you do a bit of the green, a bit of the sap green. We do some of the red. I'm just trying to think. Probably a little bit of blue. So I'll take some of the green, I'll take some of the red, this darker blue, which is like a ultramarine blue. If we mix that all together, it's making a very dark colour. I need a bit more blue, make that a bit darker. So don't have all of them as totally in the center because they're all facing different ways, so have some of them a little bit off center. It's my husband sneaking bread out of the freezer. Good job. Just a few, like as the brush gets drier, you'll be able to go back a little bit and just a hint, because you're not going to see much of those as it goes back. It's more so the ones in the front, just a few. So we'll stick some trunks and things up here. So I need something lighter. Obviously I need something lighter than here. So we'll use some of this yellowy green. Bit of white. I'll smoosh it around in a bit of this greeny browny colour that we were using, so that it's not so bright, but it's a lot lighter than what we've got there. And just with the tip of the brush, whoop, bit thick, we'll take some of that off. Tiny bit of water on the point. You want it damp enough that it will run smoothly, but not too damp that it's going to dribble down your page. And lift it off as you go, because you want them to get thinner as they go down. I'm just patting that away. I looked at it and felt that that one was a little bit too thick. I'll call that done enough. If you've joined in and followed through, I hope you had a bit of fun with this one. It's loose, keep it loose, have a bit of fun. So basically we did blending. I could go back and fiddle with the clouds more, and I might do that later. But have a look outside, see what the clouds look like. Add a bit more white if you feel it needs it, but know when to walk away. And if you're not sure, walk away, come back the next day. Make sure you wash your brushes, don't let the paint dry on that. If you're going to come back tomorrow, put this in a plastic bag. I have put it in the freezer, and then you'll be able to get it out when you want to use it the next day or a few days later. I've bought these little plastic cases. They're just document cases. I got them from Kmart here in Australia. They're only a couple of dollars, and they're perfect to keep my little pallets in. I pop that in the freezer where the bread is, and I get it out when I need it in a few days' time. So have a look at it. What I find is I'll just leave that sitting there and walk past it for the next few days, and you'll know, you'll think, oh, I need to add a bit more over here, or I need to, you know, do something else, or I need to do nothing. But you don't have to make a decision on the same day that you finish a painting. Once you've finished it, sign it down here, wherever you want. You're done. Good job. See you next time.